What I think is pretty interesting about your background is you have this legal training, you have this political side, and somehow you're in PR as well.
Yeah.
Right? Like PR plays a big role in what you do.
A lot. Well, I think in chief of staff role, you're sort of everything from like janitor to communications to crisis management. Yeah, it's right.
We're going to talk about janitorial stuff afterwards.
We should, yes. I work in the Hall of Justice, which is a building that is literally falling apart, has pee dripping from the ceilings in random moments, no exaggeration,
That's
unfortunately.
Like our
Okay, good. So I'm in good company here. So we do often end up in situations of doing things that are exceptionally not glamorous, but it's sort of what I enjoy about the work, right, is the diversity of the day. It can go from the very menial to the very heady in a quick flip between meetings, and it keeps it interesting. But I think the communication side of thing, I mean, you know this from the work all of you do, is that if people don't know about what you're doing, it's hard to know that it matters, right? I mean, it can matter to you and your heart and in your own development, but most things require other people's attention to make change. And for us, we can make some changes in the quiet. In the courtroom, we make a lot of change, but most policy requires people to support it, requires people to vote for it, requires people to help you implement it. So a big part of what we spend our time doing is trying to make sure people are aware of public safety issues in our city, that they're engaged with us around those, and for the bigger purpose that you need that community, and a big part of public safety is that people know where to go to get help, that people can rely on those resources, that people can trust one another and law enforcement to help them in those situations. So we do spend a fair amount of time being pretty mindful about what we're doing that leaves strong structures in place behind us.
So in terms of campaigns, can you talk about Prop 47? Because It sounds like that was one of the more successful campaigns in the areas that you're passionate about in sort of recent time that affect the whole state.
Is this not because of me, but it is really sort of the first time this country has, through a voter initiative, rolled back punishments on anything in criminal justice as a country. And I think even if you don't work in criminal justice, the news has permeated most spaces to understand that we incarcerate too many people, right? More than anybody in the world, at a rate we can't afford socially or economically. And we've started now to have a conversation as a country about where do we go from here. And the answers aren't easy, but the obvious place that the DA and I thought about was the war on drugs. Seems like we've been 30, almost 40 years into a documented failed experiment, right? Drugs are cheaper than they were when the war on drugs started. They're more available than they were when the war on drugs started. More people are using them than they were when the war on drugs started. So on almost any measure, we have not succeeded by using a prohibition-style approach to drug use. So the question is, what comes after that then, and how do we start to unravel the mess we've made for ourselves as a country around this issue, and how do we start to treat it more as a medical issue than we do as a crime issue and get people better instead of just punished? And so the California legislature contemplated this and wasn't able to pass it, as happens a lot in Sacramento, and then the governor was unwilling to sign it. And the DA and I spoke about it, and we said, I think the public is there. Every time we talk to people, it's one of the questions he gets when he goes places. What are you doing about the war on drugs? Why do we have so many people in prisons? And we decided that we should draft an initiative. So we hired some campaign consultants and raised some money, got a lot of nonprofits involved, and took it out statewide, polled very well, and it passed in almost every county in the state. And
so in that campaign, I remember it seems like there was some crazy celebrity momentum as well.
Yeah,
towards that.
It didn't start that way. The way the campaign was set up was that it would be important for law enforcement voices to speak on this, because when it comes to criminal justice issues, a lot of people just don't know. It's not what they spend their day on. They rely on police chiefs and DAs to tell them what's safe, what's not safe. And so they needed some trusted voices that people could look to. DA Gascon spent 30 years in policing, many of those as chiefs of police in different cities, and so he was a great spokesperson for it. But I think that the idea really resonated because the idea existed long before we did the initiative. It wasn't a new idea that the war on drugs had failed. It wasn't like D.A. Gascon came up with that. He just thought we can bring change that people are looking for. And so a lot of celebrities joined on. John Legend joined on. Jay-Z was at his concerts talking about it. Beyonce mentioned it. So that happened organically, really. It wasn't anything we coordinated. I wish I could say I had access to any of them in a meaningful way that I could get them on issues I care about. But I think when you speak authentically about an issue that people care about, they find their way to it.
Got it. And so for people here that don't know the DA, Gascon, from like what I've learned and from meeting him, in the tech world, he'd be a unicorn. He's the only DA in the country that has taken such a liberal perspective and is picking fights with people you never pick a fight with as a DA. Can you explain like his vibe essentially?
Yeah.
What is he passionate about and the fights he's fighting right now? And you're fighting.
Yeah, he's a really phenomenal DA. I wouldn't say politician because I think that's exactly what makes him great is he's not a politician and he really works hard just to be a public servant, right? And to serve with the expertise he's developed and the experience he has, what he thinks is best for San Francisco, and in a way that's guided purely by what's right and not what's expedient or what will help me get to the next position. And he stumbled into politics, frankly. He was always he was in the LAPD for almost 30 years, starting like as a patrolman in South LA, and ended up where he is now really by chance. I think by doing the right thing and fighting hard for things, people have noticed him and given him opportunities. But he didn't plan to be an elected official or a politician. And for me, that's critically important, right? Because in a role like mine, it's all about who you work for, because he's the person whose vision we're putting forward. And if he and I didn't agree, it would be very hard to do my job. Or if I didn't have a lot of respect for him and his principles, I don't think I wouldn't be there.